So we've got the fabulous spot now of having everyone straight after lunch. So what we're going to do is ask some pretty hard-hitting questions of our panel here. So I'm going to start by introducing myself, and I'll introduce to all of the panel as well. So my name's Claire Richmond. I work at Sydney HEMS, and I do a lot of the simulation training there, which fascinates me to watch how teams interact with each other, but also with other parts of the system. I'm going to introduce across our panel here, we've got Tom. He's a rowing coach. He happens to also be one of the medical directors at London Ambulance Service and one of the consultants at London HEMS, one of the new ones Anne was talking about earlier, which is fantastic. Then we've got Mike Loria, who began his career in medicine working in a ski patrol, having failed as an alpine skier. And then he spent some more time learning to jump out of perfectly good helicopters. Finally, he's now decided to go into medical school, and is currently in third year medical school while still doing some of his HEMS paramedic work. Neil is an ultra-marathon runner who happens to have learnt to fly aeroplanes at the age of 8. So he's a little bit of a prodigy. He now has gone to helicopters and is the chief pilot for London HEMS. And finally, we've got Per, who everyone has met before, but Per was a swimmer. He's a very good swimmer, and currently works as an anaesthetist and pre-hospital care physician in Norway, even though he was born in Denmark, weren't you? Yeah. So, guys, welcome. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with us. I'm going to ask the first hard question. I was asked to put together a CRM panel. And to be honest, when I said CRM panel to myself, I thought, what do they actually mean? Because one of the things that really strikes me is that there's many different versions of what CRM means to people. So, Neil, given that everything started with aviation from a CRM point of view, do you want to give us your opinion?
Yeah. Well, first of all, there are about 3 different CRMs anyway. There's cockpit resource management, crew resource management, crisis resource management. And essentially, it's all kind of the same thing. I think it stems from human factors first. That's probably the big overall picture. Then you might move down to technical skills, non-technical skills. And part of that subset is this CRM mystery thing that everybody thinks they can do and so on and so on, which we kind of can, but we need a culture to do it.
Yeah. Mike, what's your take on this?
So it's really kind of hard for me because in my experience, especially in the military, we don't call it anything. We call it life. We call it operating. So a lot of these things that we talk about in CRM and human factors were seamlessly integrated to sort of the day-to-day operations. If I had my choice, if I had my druthers, I would take it all out. I would call it all human factors and just kind of subcategorize it based upon the situation you're working in. Sort of everyday, standard operating human factors, if you will, and more the acute crisis changes to those various skill sets.
Sure. Tom, your perspective, emergency physician, rower.
Well, one perspective I've got sitting here is that there are 3 athletes and 1 person that tells athletes what to do. And you can probably spot the odd one out. I think CRM is a component of human factors which is particularly relevant to us in medicine and which I think has been the entry point for a lot of us and our systems into the wider discussion around human factors. And for me, this is all about understanding how we get the best out of people in their work situation. And conversely, how we make their work a really good thing for them to be able to do. So CRM perhaps is the bit that focuses more on how humans communicate and behave and interact with their work environment at times of crisis, but it sits within the levels of system and the many other things about human factors that are important too.
Can I butt in before you have you to go? So I think I find this question difficult to answer because in aviation we're indoctrinated with CRM. From the first exam you ever do as a pilot is human factors and limitations. And that's within 2 weeks of just learning to fly a helicopter. So from the dot you are talking about CRM. There are people using the language and doing things, and we kind of forget what it is. And I think Mike has the same experience. It's part of the system. It's part of the deal. But I think if you're from a different environment, it's difficult to pick up.
Per, you look like you're brewing something there.
I just think the same as Tom.
You just think the same as Tom?
Apart from the fact I was waiting for it, that the terminology is difficult, isn't it? CRM. Everybody who believes in CRM, put up your hands. Okay, everybody does. Who believes in human factors, non-technical skills? We all put up our hands and think, this is fucking great, isn't it? It's really good. This is really great. And it's good. But it's kind of a garbage bin, isn't it? We use that terminology for everything what is not milligrams or area pressures or doses. We just put the rest of it into CRM. And maybe that is a bit of a misuse or diluting an important phrase.
I think in that sense, CRM is slightly the bastard child of many of the other fields that exist within the field of human factors, because human factors is a real thing. It's an academic field of study, and it has many components, lots of which are relevant to us in terms of system design and human-computer interaction, loads of really interesting things, and I guess performance psychology, which is my interest. But the CRM bit is the bit that we have taken and made different things, which is perhaps why we seem confusing to human factors professionals who work in other much more structured industries like aviation, oil and gas, other areas like that. So we're the problem as well as the solution.
I think Tom and Per touched on something really interesting too. Is Per was talking about it as sort of a garbage bag, right, of different things, a trash bin of different terms. And Tom had mentioned sort of, I think, is one of the core, the sense of everything we're getting at, is it connects what we know, the academics, the knowledge, with the real world situations that we have to run into, communicating with people, stress when things are going wrong. So I think we do have to get the language down, but I think we really need to crystallize the concept and make sure that people understand really what's driving the entire thing.
Excellent. Sorry.
I've got it. Here we go. This is the answer. So,
Okay. Good.
it's a big question. So I think CRM came around from just two pilots not being able to make a decision in the cockpit in 1979. That's where it came from. And that just doesn't fit our model for what we do. We've got bigger teams in different environments, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe it doesn't fit. So maybe we should just rephrase the whole thing and just call it TRM, Team Resource Management, and then create that structure around actually what we do in medicine as opposed to the two guys in the cockpit, which just doesn't fit what we do.
Okay, so we've assembled a panel here. What do you guys think about Neil's suggestion of going from CRM to TRM?
So I think you've got to go.
Someone else.
You've got to go deeper. You've got to go deeper. So what underpins all of this is actually insight into humans, and particularly us as individuals having insight into ourselves, and insight into my favorite topic of all, which is bandwidth, and what fills it up. Because everything you put on top of that, whether you call it CRM, how perhaps an individual operates within their bandwidth, or TRM, how a team operates within their bandwidth, or system RM, it all is built on this premise of understanding ourselves and how we behave.
So it's interesting, isn't it? Because we're all medical professionals of some description. We know everything there is to know about the humans and how humans work. How come it is that we might be leaving this topic in a way that confuses us? Because we've all got the cardiovascular system down pat, the respiratory system, but how we work doesn't seem to be something that we've really nutted out. What do you guys think about how do we go forward with this?
Implementing CRM is kind of how we do it, and it's a culture, and a culture takes a generation to by definition to evolve. I think in aviation it's there, and I think there's a language and so on. I think you need to select the right people, which we can't do necessarily because you need good physicians in it, so you can pick whoever evolved. But I think you need to pick the right people, you need to start with the language, you need to continue the talk, and then move forward that way. I don't phrase that very well, but there's a starter for 10.
I think the problem is that you have all, and we have all, and maybe even you have, been on any course or simulation course, and then you come back and they will ask, so what did you learn? What did you do? Well, we talked a lot about CRM. Oh, that's really important. What did you do? oh, this closed loop. Oh, you did, yes. And then everybody talks about closed loop, and that's about it. And it doesn't go any further. I think it's a topic that is really difficult to go on an external or internal course and read, listen, learn about it, and then go and implement it. And I think that you're underestimating the thing takes more than a generation, because it takes such a long time to build culture with such delicate things.
We've got one really big cultural advantage and one really big cultural disadvantage in healthcare. So the cultural advantage is that although a lot of people in our field don't still really understand it, when you describe human factors and CRM in any context, orthopods, dermatologists, wherever it is, people get it because it's intuitive. And they can understand and work the examples you give into their own lives. But we also operate in a system where there is no psychological safety in healthcare. And there is still a big sense of threat perception and insecurity and competition between organizations and lots of things that mitigate against people doing that actual deep understanding and acceptance that we are human and we're frail and we're variable and we need to accommodate for that. And the recommendation, I guess, I would give is, it's the same way I would phrase it to the athletes, is that this is a potential performance advantage. By engaging with this, you're able to do better work and nicer work and more fun work. And for the athletes, you say, well, look, if you're not going to engage in this stuff, then you better hope that the Germans aren't doing it. You better hope that the Americans aren't doing it, because you're giving away an advantage. And me and Mike were talking before about sport, about, well, who are the opposition in this? And where we came round to is we thought, well, if we ask the patients, would they like to have clinicians who are focused on understanding themselves and how they behave under pressure and how they're going to deliver? They would probably say yes, I think. And that maybe is our route in.
I think Tom touched on something else, which I think is really, really important. Regardless of what we call it, however we design a curriculum, I think up till now, our curriculums when we talk about CRM have been largely negative in a sense, like watch out for error, these are the things that cause problems. But I think the brilliance of it is that when you really get at its core, a lot of these concepts that we talk about in CRM and human factors, it's this beautiful duality of our human nature, right? Our emotion can stress us out and we can get freaked out and it can cause all sorts of problems. But at the same time, our emotion, our love for our patients, our empathy to actually help people drives us to the edge of our performance envelope and allows us to do things, especially in the pre-hospital environment, that a lot of other people in healthcare couldn't do.
Can I disagree with you, Neil, for a second?
Oh, sure. Like you.
I just
like normal,
I think you wanted to call it, I just had to think about it because I'm a slow thinker. TRM, I disagree with that because it's more than the team, because I think that kind of Tom is driving more towards the athlete point of view, that's an individual, and I've certainly seen many, and myself as well, seen many athletes ruin it for themselves, and I've seen many very good physicians, or very good paramedics, or very good pre-hospital nurses ruin their own performance. So I think there's a TRM, team performance, in it, but there's certainly some endogenous human factor that we cannot take away for the one individual. So I don't think you're TRM. I think actually we could just throw it away. TRM doesn't work.
I think even crew resource management. No. Hold on. Because I think even crew resource management involved the study of the individual in the team, as would the individual in the team, the TRM. So I'm not sure it's just about the team. It's about the individual in the team, as well. So it might still work.
Find a better name. Okay, I buy that if you find a better name for it.
Okay, dude.
It's a bit about understanding the team as an organ. Oh, almost said orgasm there. And that's what working at London HEMS is like. Sorry, Anne, I didn't think we were going to go there. An organism, and actually recognizing that as an organism, the team has similar, maybe contrasting frailties, limits, and being empathic about that. Because in the end, human factors is about empathy. It's about designing a system, not a system that I think is going to work, where there's a diagram and some boxes and some flow, but actually appreciating that there are humans who are going to interact with that system. And the same thing when we design a team. We want to create a structure that works, but it's got to be a structure that works for them in the real world, and that doesn't require them to be at the top of their game to deliver that team structure. So there's a big place for empathy and kindness in our system design and our team design.
So what I'm hearing is that we could think about it as a system, self, team, environment, and patient, which kind of fits with an acronym I think I heard Cliff say earlier today. So we could maybe consider that as one of the things that underlines the principles of human factors or CRM, I suppose.
It's really nice how that dovetailed together.
Sorry?
It's really nice how that dovetailed together.
Yeah.
I know, yeah, maybe.
Jeez.
Okay. I'm hearing a lot here, though, about culture and about how all of these things are pervaded by the culture of an organisation, a culture of the team, and how you bring yourself to that culture, which to me says we need to translate the training that we're having in a CRM course somehow into real life and changing our organisations. Have you guys got any suggestions or ideas about how we might work on that?
I think that I think it's very difficult to go on a course and learn culture, team culture, organization culture, or business culture. That doesn't work. I think that's been proven quite well. I think one way to go is actually to be better at doing it whilst on the job or immediately after the job, either internally in the team or with someone observing you on a mission, on a shift or something like that, and address it there and then, rather than think you can go away and learn and come back and implement, because I'm certainly not smart enough for that. I need someone to say, Per, you did the following. What did you think about that? What do you think when you start annoying Jeff all the time?
So you're telling me you think it should be a daily basis kind of discussion?
Yeah, or a regular basis, maybe.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think it's an education of language. We've got to speak the same language to begin with, and I don't think we can even agree about it even now. There's got to be some sort of base language so we can actually describe the things that do affect us, and that's a separate thing altogether. There's just a very small example, if I may. Just I was in the RF North the other day, and there's a crew, military crew, just walking past, and the guy said, "Hey, for SA, there is going to be a helium balloon release about 5 miles north of the track, no conflict." I just thought if anybody else would actually understand what that guy said. And actually what he said is, for situational awareness, there's a helium balloon release going to be happening 5 miles north of the track. It's not even anywhere near us, but if we went that way. And it occurred to me, shit, there is a language. These guys have got it. Now, they have done it from the RF, from those guys who trained, and they were young guys. So they have developed this culture and understanding of language. There must be a way of doing it. I'm not sure how we do that. But there is a way.
Language is definitely such a big part of culture.
Yeah.
It's a real challenge creating technical language, because what we're talking about is one of the most intuitive elements of understanding practice or work. You can explain human factors in CRM to anyone, and the danger is that we then try and technicalize it in a way that takes it away from that intuitive understanding. I think to go back to what you were saying about culture, CRM is the bit that has pervaded our practice perhaps the most effectively so far, and CRM is definitely a micro level thing, isn't it? It's about optimizing the individual, or perhaps optimizing the individual within a team. But actually human factors is on a macro level much more about cultural behavior and closing this gap between work as imagined and work as done. And we're all at risk of it, and as we get more senior, we're all guilty of it. But the distance between the people who can set the culture and the people who understand the work as it's done gets progressively wider in bigger organizations. And closing that link is the way that we then improve human factors in a much more profound way. And perhaps a big part of that, if we're talking about having humility in the face of our own humanity, which is what we are doing, the more senior people model that behavior, the more pervasive the idea comes. So it's important that we put these courses on and we talk about it and we get the ideas out there, but the more and the further up the food chain we model the behaviors around human factors, the more credible it is.
I think that's really interesting that you're suggesting that there is that element of what comes from the top. Now, there's a bunch of people here who sit at the top, but there's also a bunch of people here who sit well below those high levels of organisation that are working their way through. have you got any tips or tricks for how people might make a groundswell of change from a junior level?
I think certainly we're doing a lot of work with the medical students and the guys that come through our court, through London HEMS, and really driving a lot of this stuff home to them early on. And I was really surprised when I first started, 10 years ago, learning that there was no real concept of this. And now you start hearing it around the place. I think there is a groundswell. I think people are starting to hear about it and understand it. It is intuitive, I think, was a really important thing. It's just a case of refining it. So I think it's probably on the way, but starting with the guys at the bottom would be a good start, I suppose.
Yeah.
I think language, terminology, and phraseology is really important. That is not someone high in the organization or some teacher or lecturer or whatever talks about. That is bring it all the way down to medical students or any other student in the organization about what do we actually mean by whatever phrases we use. What is in it? Why is it in it? And start really from the ground with what does the word mean.
I mean, the other thing for cultural change, and we talk about it and we don't do it, is if we want to develop it from the ground upwards, then whenever we see it, we should praise it. Going back to what Mike said about it not being preventing error, but improving the quality of work, whenever we identify something's gone well because of good application of CRM or other human factors principles, we should call it out and identify it and show it to people. And things spread much more quickly. That's what we learned from the Learning from Excellence talk we heard last year, wasn't it?
Totally agree, yeah.
And certainly uses in the daily life, which is a tendency we think about the thoracotomy or the really, really, really difficult RSI or whatsoever, the difficult landing or the difficult whatever. We should use it in the every case, everything, the daily life to implement it rather than just think it's for crisis and difficult stuff.
Excellent. So I think really we've still not necessarily nutted out exactly what we mean by CRM, but we know what we mean broadly. I still don't think we've come exactly, even with such an experienced panel, to knowing exactly what those letters each mean, but we know now, I think, a lot more about the principles. It's interesting, I was at a workshop that Tom organised the other day, and Gareth Davies made the comment of, is human factors and CRM something we should be teaching to children? So it's not just something that actually is something that the aviation industry talks about or the medical industry, but something that pervades all of our lives.
Hold on, I do that. I tell my kids not to hit each other. That's a very, very good start.
True, very true. Hey guys, have you got anything from the Twitter sphere that you want to ask?
Yes. So in regards to the groundswell idea, a little medic asks, can the hospital system directly retard or obstruct the education and implementation of human factors and CRM?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Absolutely. I think they can obstruct a lot of things. But I think one of the biggest ways we obstruct it is we can it in sort of these boring 4-hour courses that stuff it down your throat in a long list of trash. That, well, it's good stuff, but the way it's presented is in these disparate little topics and a whole bunch of them. And people walk out of there not being able to take it away. In fact, I think it turns people away from the topic and understanding it. It's just another one of those boring things they have to do, another one of those hospital-required mandatory things. And that nasty taste that I think it leaves in people's mouth is a huge barrier to getting people on board.
Yeah, there's a big misperception thing about training in hospitals, isn't there? We got them in, we gave them some human factors training, so now that's done. They now know some human factors, and if they screw up, well, we told them about human factors. So that can be the next SI report.
I'm sure that's what it was like in aviation when we started. The same deal. Yeah, we've given the lesson, off they go, and it's just got to get on the roll. It's got to snowball.
We got a couple more, so I'm going to sneak them in. How can we cognitively reframe a threat versus a challenge so that we can improve our process and workflow?
So we went to the same conference. Tom very kindly arranged, and we talked about this threat and challenge thing. And it just occurred to me, I've been thinking about it a lot over the last couple of days. So I drove to the airport. On the way to the airport to come here, the M25 was shut, okay, which is a big thing. I had literally 40 minutes to get there, and it's going to be a disaster. And so immediately I'm in threat mode. Everything's gone crazy. My physiology has changed. I said, hold on a second. I'm just going to try this thing. Maybe this is just a challenge. How can I optimize my success? So turn the radio down, open the window a bit, had a look at the map, gross error check, am I going in the right direction, the right time, right, just got down and got onto it. I reframed it as a challenge, and I was all over it and ready to do it, rather than considering it was a threat. And that's what I took away from that the other day. I thought it was quite a good thing. That worked for me.
Something that our sports psychologists introduced, which I think is very powerful, is thought management, which is we get offered up by our threatened psyche all sorts of negative interpretations of the situation we're in. And the problem is that you can't, as a psychologist, come along and go, well, think positive thoughts. Try not to be so negative and try harder to be more positive, because that clearly doesn't work. What we have to do is accept the facts and challenge the interpretation, because that's where we have power. So if I get a patient, and I had a previous patient with a similar presentation, I didn't do very well, it'd be very easy for me to go into a threat mode. And I have to accept that I didn't do very well last time. That fits with the honesty and the humility. But I can challenge the interpretation that means I will struggle this time. I accept that I failed then. I've made these interventions. This is what I'm going to do differently this time. This is an opportunity for me to now perform. And I think that in sport is really quite powerful, because athletes deal with a lot of failure before they succeed.
Perfect. And before Jason cuts the light, one last very brief question. Apparently there's a SMAC pickup basketball league. Pierre, the people want to know, can you dunk?
Put me in the water.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. Really awesome conversation.